Hello everybody. In this video we will be studying about Cronquist system of classification along with binomial nomenclature. So in the previous video you have come across about Engler and Prandtl's classification, wherein the two German scientists compiled their work about the classification and they brought out a classification. You know what is a taxonomy, what is grouping of organism, etc. So here you are going to study about Cronquist system of classification given by Arthur Cronquist in the year 1981. So who is this? He was a senior curator at New York Botanical Garden. So curator is the person who looks after the garden, okay. So this person had a direct experience with all the plants. So botanical gardens means you must be aware of that they are systematic way of growing plants. Along with growing the plants, they will be knowing everything about that particular plant. So we can say that Arthur Cronquist had a complete description about the plants. Characteristics were given completely in detail in his book, okay. So he was interested with angiosperms, that is the flowering plants, wherein he could divide them into two different classes. So what he did was he brought about different families and divided them into orders and subclasses. So that's what he said. See, grouping of angiosperm families into orders and subclasses worldwide basis. Okay, so his classification was accepted worldwide and the descriptions was given in the evolution and classification of flowering plants in the year 1968. Okay, so his classification was noted down in this particular book which was published. Next, what are the major criteria of his classification? The first thing is seed ferns were considered to be a probable ancestors of angiosperms. Okay, so seed ferns was considered as probability. They might be the ancestors of angiosperms. Then what did he give? He gave detailed character-wise analysis of probable evolutionary trends in angio. So as I said, he was a curator. Okay, so since he was a curator, he had the chance of studying each and every progressive characters. Okay, so when he was in contact with these plants, he came to know the character-wise evolutionary trend. For example, for instance, we can say that the pteridophytes, okay, the pteridophytes are the first plants which paved way for seed habit. We say seed habit was seen in pteridophytes, okay. Seed habit in sense, seed-like structure but not seed as such, okay. So then we said in gymnosperms, this is the evolutionary example which I am giving. So when we go to gymnosperms, we can say that in gymnosperms we will say that there is the presence of naked seed. Then when you come to angiosperms, we say the seeds are enclosed with fleshy drupe or a fruit enclosing the seed. So seed is inside, it is not naked. So you can see the evolutionary. So from in the case of bryophytes, etc., we will not see anything called seed or seed habit. But for the first time we come across seed habit in pteridophytes. Okay, so then that is because of different types of spores which is produced there. Okay, and then we say from seed habit they paved way for seed. Okay, so seed was seen for the first time in the gymnosperms, which were naked seeds, and then the angiosperms. So this is the characteristic evolution which is showing how the angiosperms have evolved during the course of time. So that is what he has done. He has given detailed characters. So whatever analysis he has done, he has given detailed character how this particular flower is being evolved. Angiosperms is evolved from gymnosperms or the previous ancestors. Next, he has classified the angiosperms into two classes. Magnoliopsida and Liliopsida. These two are the classes in which he divides the entire gymnosperms. Now, we are familiar with the monocots and dicots. These two are nothing but monocot and dicot. So, it is a traditional equivalent to monocotyledonate and dicotyledonate. So, in this Magnoliopsida and Liliopsida, he is emphasizing subgroups. He has divided them into further subgroup. Now, how many subgroups? There are 11 subgroups in which 6 of them are placed in Magnoliopsida and 5 of them are placed in Liliopsida. Okay. So he divides the angiosperms into Magnoliopsida and Liliopsida, and they are further subdivided into 5 and 6 subclasses. Which are the subclasses? Here you can see here the classification. Angiosperms are broadly divided into 2 classes. One is Magnoliopsida and Liliopsida. In Magnoliopsida, you have 6 subclasses. The first one is Magnolidae, second one is Hemimelidae, Caryophyllaceae, Dillenidae, Rosidae and Asteridae. Okay, so these are the 6 subclasses. When you move on to the Liliopsida, you have Alismatidae, Aricidae, Camelinidae, Zingiberidae and Liliidae. Okay, so these are traditional monocotyledonate, okay, monocots, and these are considered as the traditional dicots. Okay, so this is how he has sub-categorized the 2 classes into 11 subclasses. So this is the classification given by Cronquist. Now, what are the merits and demerits? So, to begin with the merits, it shows an excellent treatment of seed plants. Okay, so he has categorized it in a very efficient way. So that is the first merit. The second merit is Polypetalidae and Apetalidae are combined. Okay, so these 2 characters are combined. The third one is gymnosperms are placed as separate group. Okay, so few mistakes done by Bentham and Hooker classification. One of it was this. So he has separated the gymnosperms from angiosperms. So even though gymnosperms are producing seeds, but they are entirely different plants. Okay, they do not flower. Okay, and that's the reason. One of the merit is they are being placed into a separate group. The fourth merit, classification of monocots is better than Bentham and Hooker's classification. So as I said, as the classification is modernized, okay, as we come across all the scientific technologies, okay, wherein you can come to the depth of molecularity, cellular activities, metabolic activities, then there will be always a changes. So as we say, there is modernization of classification or modernization of anything for that matter, it will always be better than the previous one. So the same thing, Bentham and Hooker, in this classification, he has shown better classification of monocots. Okay. Then in Arachiclamidae and Metaclamidae, plants with epigynous flowers are kept at the last. Okay. When these epigynous flowers are considered to be as modern or evolved form of ovary, okay, flowers, he has placed them in the last, which is a correct thing which he did. So that's the reason we say there are 5 merits for Cronquist classification. Now, moving on to demerits. So whenever we say there is something positive, yeah, negative also pop-ups here and there. So like that, in demerits, the first thing is monocots are placed before dicotyledonate. So we all know that the monocots are the most evolved one. Okay, so here what he has done is he has placed monocots before dicotyledonate. So that is one mistake. Then Amentiferae, which is a simple group, okay, simple group because of reduction growth in it, he says that it is a primitive type, okay. Even though Amentiferae is an evolved form of plants, since they have reduction growth in them, they show a little primitive characters, he places them under primitive flowers itself, okay. So that is one of the demerit. Then Diclematis flowers, he considered that to be a primitive. Then like that, 3 mistakes of considering the evolved form as primitive. The next one is wind pollination, which was regarded as primitive by Cronquist. We all know that wind pollination is the most evolved form of pollination. Now, apetalous flowers are more primitive than petaloid flowers. So what did he say? He considers that apetalous flowers are more primitive than petalous, whereas it is not so, okay. So that is the few demerits of Cronquist classification, okay. Okay. So when we know about classifications, these are the primitive types of classification. When you say primitive classification, they are not being universally accepted because of few variation. Now, we will know how to classify them basis on what we are classifying them. To begin with, you should be first knowing what is biodiversity. So biodiversity you have come across from your schooling time. So I would rather give it you a simplest form, that is the various types of life forms around you, the different varieties of life forms, okay. When you say about, for example, a simple one, when you talk about roses, can you get only one color, red rose or white color? Like you find many, yellow, pink, okay, like that. So there is variety, everything has variety. When you talk about rice, when you go into a provision store and when you step out and you ask for rice, they will ask you what type of rice you want. You will find red rice, BT rice, Sona. There are rich different varieties of rice. So when we talk about a single rice varieties, then you just look around what possible variety of plants and animals are around us, okay. So it is such great difference. Now, they say that according to around 2010 or something, they said that there were around 1.7 billion to 1.8 billion number of species which has been identified. And they also say there are plenty yet to be identified, okay. So that is the statistics of biodiversity. We have very rich biodiversity and you should be proud that India is having its hotspots of biodiversity, okay. So now, when we talk about biodiversity, I said there are plenty of species. Now, for instance, you can come across different pockets of regions in particular India, okay. So we do talk or converse in different languages, okay. So these people, different regional people, they are naming their own food particles or whatever, food grains, vegetables, fruits in their own mother tongue, okay. So there is always a diverse, for particular rice, you can be calling it as different in different language. So in India, you can be calling it whatever mother tongue emphasizes, okay. Akki, for instance, in Kannada. Can you go to America and ask for akki? Yeah, they will not be knowing what it is, okay. So what was an idea of many botanists, many scientists was to universalize the name, okay. So in instant, for an example, when you go to a different region and say the scientific name, it will be the same, and come back to India and ask for scientific name, it will be the same. For same product, same grain, food grain or fruits or vegetables. So that is the speciality of scientific name. So what happened was, there were plenty of regional names given for one particular stuff, okay. For instance, if it is rice, there were plenty of regional names given for rice. So they said we should give some name which will be one particular name for a particular stuff throughout the world. That is nomenclature. So what happened? Many scientists gathered together, they brought out a conference, they brought out few principles, criterias of naming the products, naming the plants as well as animals around, flora and fauna. So that particular committee for botany is said as International Code for Botanical Nomenclature. Okay. So all the naming done under the plant, under the flora is under ICBN. Whereas for zoology, it is International Code for Zoological Nomenclature, that becomes ICZN. Okay. So there was two international committee set up for nomenclature. One was for botany and the other one for zoology. So these committees started to bring out few principles, few rules and regulations, criteria for how to name a particular organism. Okay. So then they came out with a better idea, that is to name the entire living organisms, be it plant or animal, in two names. One is the generic name and the specific epithet. Epithet is taxa. I will tell about it later. Okay. A particular character or small group can be called as epithets. Okay. So they said that they can be categorized, all the organism can be given two names. One is the generic name and the other one is specific epithet or specific name. So two means by and name. So two names can be said as binomial nomenclature. Okay. So binomial nomenclature was given by Carolus Linnaeus in the year 1753. Okay. In his book Species Plantarum. Okay. For the first time he gave binomial two naming for a particular organism. It has been given in a book that is Species Plantarum in the year 1753. Now, when you talk about binomial nomenclature, we are giving two names. Okay. So that is said as one is the generic name and the other one is specific name. So before you get into the binomial nomenclature, you should be knowing what is this classification about. Okay. As I said in the previous video, classifying an organism is purely based on the characteristics. Okay. So these characteristics can be merely the morphology, that is the external appearance, or the internal anatomy, cytology, embryology and so on. Okay. So when they studied the characteristic of the organism in detail, okay, in detail, we were capable of placing them into particular groups. Okay. So now classification in the case of botany, we say it as kingdom, the first taxa. Okay. I'll explain. So taxa is nothing but a group which has similarity among them. Okay. So taxonomy. Taxonomy is the science of classifying the organisms into their respective groups, okay, based on their characteristics. So as I said earlier, biodiversity. There are millions and billions of species which has been identified, yet to be identified, and these species have to be studied. So studied, why are we supposed to study them? It's again because of human selfish nature. Why are we studying? What use can we get out of it? What is the benefits of these plants around us? What are the benefits of these animals around us? And can they harm us? If we are going to eat up some fruit, will it kill us? Is it poisonous or is it healthier? So these are the few criteria for us to know the plants and animals around us. And another thing is, how are they around us? Are they helping our environment or are they harming our environment? So like this. So this need to know about these plants and animals brought in the very, very primitive classification. That is, when humans, before civilization, we were nomads, we were moving from one place to another. Why? In search of food. Okay. So when they started searching food, for the first time, humans started to classify the very simple classification. What? Edible, non-edible. Fruits which can be eaten, roots can be eaten, and then which cannot be eaten. Okay. So when he was nomadic, he could classify simplest way of this particular tree's fruit is, yes, it's good for us. If you eat that, you're going to be killing yourself. Okay. So like this was the simplest classification. Okay. And later on came the complicated, complex classification. That is because of a science and technology. As we got into the depth of the organism, we could classify them more accurately. Okay. So that is called taxonomy. So in taxonomy we have different taxa. So as I said, we move through the hierarchy. We will go to the simplest ones. Okay. That is the smallest taxa or the last taxa will have maximum similarity and no difference at all. And you go higher the hierarchy, above the first one, they will have maximum differences. Okay. Now moving on to kingdom. We have two kingdoms. One is the plant and the other one is animal. Okay. So the kingdoms can be classified into two only. Under kingdom you will get only two taxa, two groups, that is plants and animals. So plants is a separate kingdom and animals is a separate kingdom. Then you have phylum, division, class, order, family, genus and species. Okay. So phylum or division. Phylum is for the animals and division is for plants. Okay. So that is one criteria. So this is the hierarchical classification of an organism. Be it an animal, cat, dog, or the rice, or the flowering rose, or the orchids, whatever you take in consideration, they will be having placed under this particular hierarchy of classification. So kingdom, we can take it, skip the phylum, go to division. Kingdom, division, class, order, family, genus and species. Species is the last taxa, and this particular taxa will have maximum similarities. Okay. So this particular taxa will have maximum similarities. When you talk about kingdom, they will have maximum dissimilarity. Why am I saying maximum dissimilarity? Ma'am, it's plants, everything is plant. What is the much difference in it? You have in this unicellular, okay, the simple water dwelling, okay, chlorella, spirulina, whatever you take it for consideration. You have the thallophytes, okay, thallophytes. You have the bryophytes, pteridophytes. Then you have gymno, then at last angiosperms. Okay. So these are the different types of species, different groups wherein can be said as plants. So that's the reason we say they show maximum difference at kingdom. So then coming to the division, so there will be a little less difference compared to that of kingdom. Class, it goes as you go down the hierarchy, what happens? The differences reduces. Okay. So as you go down the hierarchy, the differences reduces, and what increases? Similarity increases. Okay, similarity increases. So that's what we say. See, for example, species. One particular species is rice. Another species you can take about wheat. Okay, so they are different not wheat, only rice. You can take species consideration as only rice, wherein you can have your basmati rice here, you can have your BT rice here, you can even have your golden rice here. Okay, so they belong to Oryza sativa. Oryza sativa is the rice. So these species vary. Okay, sativa. When you talk about different species, the particular species vary, whereas genus is same. Genus is same. So you can have the genus to be same, but species vary. So that's the reason we can say species, they have maximum similarity. Can you say golden rice is completely different from the basmati rice? No. Only the taste or the grain size or the composition, that is the richness of vitamins, richness of the starch content can vary, but you cannot say that rice is different. Okay, so there comes the species. Then the genus, you will have different genus among the wheat can be under them. But when you talk about family, these both belong to same family. Wheat and rice belong to Poaceae. Poaceae is the family of both wheat, rice. Okay, they come under same family. So can you know? So there will be a taxa from which they are further divided into the other taxa wherein they are further divided. So as you go down the hierarchy, the differences will reduce and the similarity will increase. Okay. So this is about classification. You should be knowing each can be said as a taxa. So this is the smallest taxa with more of similarity. This is the biggest taxa with maximum dissimilarity. Okay. So that is about classification. So now you know classification is a process wherein they are not merely placed into the group. We are studying them. So what is the study? What kind of study occurs? Thing is, it's a way wherein you first identify. Okay, we identify the species, then we study in detail about them, and then we place it into the particular groups. Okay, so when you identify the species, okay, when you have to place them into particular group, so identifying will come along with naming them. Okay, you can just name a plant here and another person name it elsewhere. Okay, for instance, you can say in India, in Mysore, you name a particular new species of rice. Okay, you are finding a species called so and so. You can name it whatever you want, means you will name as for example instant A. You have identified a variety of rice, you have named it as A. There is an elsewhere a person, maybe in America or Australia, a person finds the same variety of rice but he names it as B. So in India you are naming it as A, in America he is naming it as B. Okay, but both is same variety. Okay, same variety of rice. Now whatever publications, whatever he gives about the mineral, the composition of rice A, B will be same, but it is not universally accepted. For it to be universally accepted, there can be only one name published and one person gets the criteria or credit of it. Okay, so in that case we use the binomial nomenclature. So the scientific method of naming an organism will be accepted worldwide. Okay, that is called binomial nomenclature. Now, this person A names it scientifically and publishes means he'll get the credit. The Indian person gets the credit. So how he has to name it? So what is the rules of binomial nomenclature? Okay, we will see the rules. The first rule is Latinize. Latinize. Okay, so you need to Latinize the name of the organism. Okay, so Latinization is whatever name you have come across, you will change it to Latin name. So it should have two names. Okay, okay. So the first one will be the generic name and the second name will be the species name. Okay, so that is the Latinized name given to it. It should be, the first name should be the generic name and the second name should be the species name. So when you write the generic name, the first letter should be capital. Okay, whereas the species name, the first letter should be small letter. Okay, so the first letter should be capital and the second word, that is the species name, should be small. And then when you write it, when you write these names, how are you writing it? You can italics, you can write it in italics. Okay, you can write it italics, or when you, this is typing mode, that is when you type it, you can write it in, type it in italics. When you write it, you will write separately and underline. Okay, when you write it, you will write separately and underline the names. Okay, for example, Mangifera indica. Okay, Mangifera is the generic name. You're going to write it. The first letter will be capital and indica is the species name and the first letter will be in small. Okay, so when you write it, you're going to write it and underline it separately. Okay, so anywhere you're writing the scientific name, you have to follow this process. Okay, Mangifera indica, Coccus nucifera. Yes, your name, you can see generic name, first letter is capital, species name, first letter is small. Okay, so Oryza sativa, Oryza, O capital and the sativa is small. Okay, so these are the few examples of writing. Now, this particular names which you are going to write it will be Latinized. One more thing is, these particular names can carry the author's name. For example, Mangifera indica was given by Linnaeus. Okay, so how have I written Linnaeus? It's just the abbreviation, L-I-N-N, Linnaeus abbreviation. So when it is an abbreviation, then you will be understanding, you are going to write it like this and you will understand this particular person is the one who has the author of this particular plant. Means he is the one who has cited this name, given this name to this particular plant. Mangifera indica, mango. Okay, so it is mango. Next, the other thing is, we know the indica. Okay, so Azardactica indica. Okay, so this indica is indigenous species to India. Okay, so it is the indigenous species to India. Okay, now, so when these are the few rules that you should follow. It should be typed in italics, written means separately written with underline. They should consist of generic name and the species name. Generic name will have one capital letter, starting letter will be capital letter, species name starting letter will be small letter, and all the words should be Latinized. Now, there is few principles given by them. So what is it? First thing is, the person who cites it will get the patent. Okay. So one thing is, this particular plant, for example, Azardectica indica or Mangifera indica, can be patentized by others. Patentized in the sense, we can take the complete ownership of dealing with that plant. Any alkaloids getting out of it, any experiments to be done with it, any drug to be synthesized from it, or any perfume to be synthesized from it, for every work in that particular plant should be asked, they should ask the permission of the one who owns the patent. Okay. So if a person is owning the patent, he can give the liberty of carrying out the experiment on it unless and until he needs something. For example, if I am the person who carries the patent for Mangifera indica, that is mangoes, any candies to be produced from the mango extract, that particular industry will come and ask permission from me. Okay. When he asks permission from me, it is my sole decision to give the permission or not to give. I can even ask for the profit from it, a percentage of profit from it. Okay. So that is called patentship. A very sad story is, many of the Indian plants is being patentized by the Western people. Okay. So the Vinca rosea, which you come across, the pink white flowers near the roadside. Okay. Vinca rosea. Vinca rosea. So R small, V capital separately. So this particular plant has two compounds in it, vincristin and vinblastin. So these two drugs are, these two compounds from this are used as drug to cure cancer. And to this particular plant, Vinca rosea, is being patentized by Western people. So now, even though it is a very common plant grown on the roadside, every Indian, whoever has to take up any work under it, should call up the Western people and get the permission for it. So this is one miserable thing which is occurring with Indians, even the aloe vera. Okay, so some of the plants which is used as wonder drugs is being patentized by Americans. Okay, so the binomial nomenclature consists of few regulations, rules and regulations, how to name them. So this particular name is globalized in the sense they are accepted worldwide. Even if you go to Africa and ask for Coccus nucifera, for a scientist you have to work with that Coccus nucifera, he will understand it's coconut. You come to India and ask for Coccus nucifera, yes, they will understand it's coconut. If you go to America, Australia, Antarctica, any part of the world, they will understand it is what is what, because of this scientific name. So that is what the ICBN has worked for. Universalization of the name is done by these ICBN people by giving it scientific name. Okay, so that is about this particular classification. So nomenclature is a method of naming, scientific naming of the plants. So there are a few more criteria, citation, author, etc., which we'll be knowing in the next video. Okay, thank you.